Hey, class, welcome back. We are still talking about our Native American unit, and today we're talking about their agriculture and food, things they ate, how they got their food, and a lot of them they were farmers, they were hunters, they were gatherers, and today that we're going to talk about all of that. So, depending on the tribe and the area they lived in, though, they got their food different ways. Like I said, they fished, they farmed, they hunted, they gathered, which means they picked berries, nuts, fruit, things that nature, and and some of them used a combination of all four ways to get their food, but a lot of them just specialized in one area.
How did Native Americans get their food? Depending on the tribe and the area they lived in, Native Americans got their food by different methods, including farming, hunting, fishing, and gathering. Most tribes use a combination of these four ways to get their food, but many specialized in one area, such as farming or hunting.
So many Native Americans, though, they grew crops for food, but the experts in farming tended to come from the southern states like the southeast and southwest. Tribes like the Navajo and the Cherokee, they grew these large crops and used farming methods that we've talked about with Mesopotamia and stuff, such as irrigation and to bring water to dry areas. And they also rotated, so they kept the ground fertile over the years.
Farming. Many American Indian tribes grew crops for food, but the experts in farming tended to come from the southern states like the southeast and the southwest. Tribes like the Navajo and Cherokee grew large crops and employed advanced farming procedures such as irrigation to bring water to dry areas and crop rotation to keep the ground fertile over many years. They would grow enough extra food so they could store it and survive the winter.
All right, so the main crop of the Native Americans, though, was corn. Corn was the main crop, and it's not just with certain. It was all Native Americans. One of the main crops was corn, but they called it maize. Uh, it could be stored in winter. It could be ground into flour. They could use it in different ways, and they used it daily. Uh, they used the entire plant too. They used the husk. They used for crafts. They used the cob for fuel and fires. So they used every single thing that they could with this, and you'll see this as a, a common thing. Everything that they used, they used every single part of it. They hunted the bison. They used every single part of that bison. So nothing went to waste.
Farming continued. The main crop that the Native Americans grew was corn, which they called maize. Maize was eaten by many of the American Indian tribes because it could be stored for the winter and ground into flour. Maize was eaten nearly daily by many tribes and was a major part of much of the American Indian culture. All of the maize plant was used, including the husk for crafts and the cob for fuel and fires. Although maize was the primary crop, many other crops were cultivated by the tribes, including squash, beans, pumpkins, cotton, and potatoes.
All right. Some of the tribes, or a lot of the tribes, got their food from hunting, though, and hunting was a big part of the Native American culture. They hunted for their food. They hunted deer. They hunted elk. They hunted bison, just depending on the area they were in and what was abundant.
Hunting and fishing. Many tribes got most of their food from hunting. Hunting was a big part of Native American culture.
All right. So, like the Native American and the Great Plains, they hunted. They relied heavily on buffalo or bison. These are buffalo over here, or bison as food. But they also used a lot of the buffalo for other areas of life. Like I said, they used every single part of whatever they killed or whatever they grew. And for the buffalo, they would use the bones for tools. They used the hides for blanket and clothes, and to make cover for the DPs. And they even used the bison hair for and tendons when they were sewing. So they used every single part of whatever they killed.
The buffalo or bison. Native Americans in the Great Plains area of the country relied heavily on the buffalo, also called the bison. Not only did they eat the buffalo as food, but they also used much of the buffalo for their areas of their lives. They used the bones for tools, they used to hide for blankets, clothes, and to make the covers for their teepees. They even made rope from bison hair and used the tendons as thread when sewing. Almost every part of the buffalo was used.
All right. So the bison, it was big. It was a very powerful animal, and it traveled in large herds. But in order to hunt them, now this is before they had horses. They had to be clever and they had to work together. They'd get the buffalo to stampede off a cliff or into a pit before they had horses and could round them up how they wanted. So it was a very very clever way of hunting.
The bison is a big and powerful animal that traveled in large herds. In order to hunt them, the American Indians had to be clever and work together. They would often get the buffalo to stampede off a cliff or into a pit.
All right. In other areas of the country, the American Indians they hunted to use weapons such as a bow and arrow. All right, and they used snares, they used traps, they hunted deer, duck, rabbits, other animals. So it just depended on where you were at in the country, what was abundant, what they had plenty of.
Other animals. In other areas of the country, the American Indians hunted using weapons such as the bow and arrow or using snares and traps. They hunted deer, ducks, rabbits, and other animals.
All right, and if it was a tribe that was near a coastal area or near lakes, they would specialize in fishing, and they used spears or they used nets to catch these fish. And the fish could be smoked or dried, and they could store them for winter. And it was all about storing stuff. They didn't want just one meal; they wanted to be able to store it and have plenty for the winter when it got cold. So in the north, some Native Americans they would ice fish, and they would cut a hole in the ice and use their spears for fishing.
Fishing. In the coastal areas or near large lakes, tribes would specialize in fishing. They often use spears or nets to catch fish. Fish could be smoked or dried to be stored for the winter. In the north, some Native Americans would ice fish. This is where they would cut a hole in the ice and fish using spears.
All right, and then, like I said, another method of gathering their food or agriculture and getting their food together was gathering. And this is where they used the environment around them. They would gather berries, nuts, fruit from naturally growing trees, and most Native Americans used gathering for some portion of their food.
Gathering. Gathering is when people get their food from the environment around them. Native Americans would gather food such as berries, nuts, or other fruit from naturally growing trees and berry bushes. Most Native Americans use gathering to get some portion of their food.
All right. So, comprehension question: what did Native Americans grow for food? A, puppies; B, crops; or C, the mustache. They grew crops for their food.
Ding, ding, ding. We have a winner.
Number two, what was the main crop that Native Americans planted? Was it A, corn; B, bananas; or C, apples? It was corn. Most Native Americans had plenty of corn that they grew.
Ding, ding, ding. We have a winner.
Number three, how do buffalo travel? A, they travel alone; B, they don't; or C, they travel in large herds. It's C, they travel in large herds, which made it difficult on the Native Americans. They had to come up with ways to hunt them.
Ding, ding, ding. We have a winner.
Number four, what did tribes on the coast specialize in? A, fishing; B, weaving; or C, shopping. It is A, fishing. They specialized in fishing. If there was water around, there were going to be fish in the ocean or in the lake or river where they were at. So they specialized in fishing, learned how to use nets, learned how to use spear to do spear fishing.
Ding, ding, ding. We have a winner.
Last one, what did most Native Americans use to get their food? A, traps; B, gathering; or C, water. They gathered. A lot of them, a large portion of the tribes used gathering, and some part of getting their food, some portion of getting their food, which means they would get berries, nuts, fruits, stuff that was in the environment, in the land around them.
Ding, ding, ding. We have a winner.
All right, class, that is it for this lesson. We'll be back next time with more Native American, and I will see you all then. Be sure to go on Schoology and get all and turn it in, get credit.